Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
The story about that goofy governor out of Missouri simply will not end. It will not end. And what's weird about it is the governor apparently has no shame. He doesn't understand how silly he looks. But in case you're curious, the latest update from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and Jack Suntrup wrote the article. Parsons says he believes prosecutor will bring charges in the Post-Dispatch case. So you recall the story about the reporter who discovered a huge flaw in a government website. He pointed it out to the government, let them know about it. Then when they fixed the flaw, he reported about it. And now the governor wants that man prosecuted for hacking. And it's funny on one level, but it's not funny in the sense that this guy could theoretically be prosecuted. But it's crazy. So Governor Mike Parson on Wednesday, this is a couple days ago, expressed his opinion that the Cole County prosecuting attorney will bring charges in the case of the reporter who alerted the state to a significant data vulnerability. And he alerted the state after simply looking at the website with his eyeballs. And apparently, the governor thinks that's hacking. Now, the governor might not know what computers do or what the internet does or what hacking is, but someone needs to pull him aside and say, dude, just stop this already. Just move on. You can invent some other crisis to fix, but this is not the battle you want to fight. Parson was asked what he would do if the prosecutor didn't pursue the case, and he said, I don't think that'll be the case. That's up to the prosecutor. That's his job to do. Now, he was referencing a state statute on computer tampering, which says a person commits the offense if they knowingly and without authorization or without reasonable grounds to believe that he has such authorization, modifies or destroys data, discloses or takes data, or accesses a computer network and intentionally examines personal information. The problem is that the information that was put on that site was so easily available that anybody could look at it by pressing one button on their computer when they had the site up, and they wouldn't know the information was there until they saw it. So you can't say like, oh, they should have known not to look. How do you know it's there unless you press that button? So this is crazy. Parson said if somebody picks your lock on your house for whatever reason, it's not a good lock, it's a cheap lock, or whatever problem you might have, they don't have the right to go into your house and take anything that belongs to you. No, that's true. But, sir, if someone's walking by your house and they turn and look, and you've got your drapes wide open, and you're walking around in there doing your dance moves, watching American Bandstand, and you're upset because people looked from the street and your drapes are wide open, that's your fault. Close your drapes and stop dancing. A Post-Dispatch reporter in October alerted the state to a data issue contained on a Department of Elementary and Secondary Education website that left Social Security numbers of educators vulnerable to public disclosure. And again, if the reporter hadn't pointed this out, the problem would probably still be there. After alerting the state, the newspaper didn't publish its story until after the officials moved to protect the vulnerable information. The newspaper did not disclose any personal information. And that's the point. You understand they could have run the story and just, hey, look at this idiotic gap in the security on that website. They could have done that. They didn't. They actually waited to make sure that the information could get protected properly by the people whose job it is to protect it properly. A web application that allowed the public to look up teacher certifications and credentials contained the vulnerability. So you could look up your teacher to decide what credentials they had and see their social security number too. Yeah, why not? Now, no private information was clearly visible, but the social security numbers for school teachers, administrators, and counselors were present and accessible in the HTML source code of the publicly available pages involved. HTML, of course, is hypertext markup language. Oh boy, such useless information I've got in this thing. Records obtained by the Post-Dispatch showed Education Commissioner Margie Vandeven initially planned to thank the reporter who uncovered the vulnerability. So they were originally going to thank the guy because he did them a solid, as we'd say. They also showed that a state cybersecurity specialist informed the director of the Department of Public Safety that an FBI agent said the incident is not an actual network intrusion. So the feds have been asked about this, and the feds said, no crime was broken. No laws were broken here. No crime committed. So move on. Instead, the specialist wrote that the FBI agent said the state's database was misconfigured, which allowed open source tools to be used to query data that should not be public. And by the way, open source tools is not like tools you get out of a toolbox and big mechanical things. It's simply pressing one button on your computer. Everyone's got that button on their computer. These documents show there was no network intrusion, the newspaper said last week. As DESE initially acknowledged, the reporter should have been thanked for the responsible way he handled the matter and not chastised or investigated as a hacker. But the governor, who is often tangled with news outlets over reports he doesn't like, announced a criminal investigation into the reporter and the Post-Dispatch, wasting government money. Just an utter waste of money. Tax dollars. The people in that state pay taxes. The governor is in charge on some level of seeing how that money's spent. And by insisting on an investigation here and a prosecution, tax dollars are being wasted. When the big question should be asked, who misconfigured that website and how did that happen? Heads should roll, but not the reporters. A spokesperson for the Missouri State Highway Patrol said recently the agency had finished its probe of the story and had turned the case over to the Cole County prosecuting attorney to see if anything will be done. And then they asked the prosecutor a follow-up question, and the prosecutor declined to comment and also didn't share a copy of the patrol's investigative report. So we'll have to wait and see if, in fact, the prosecutor does anything. But the prosecutor apparently is going to file charges according to the governor. The governor thinks that charges should be forthcoming. And so this is either a governor who is ignorant of just facts and reality, or a governor who's doing something political, and that is going after somebody who made him look bad. And neither of those is a good look, as we say. Now, I'll admit this isn't happening in Michigan, so it's no skin off my nose in that respect. But it actually is a problem. It is a problem because this kind of behavior is so backwards. It's utterly backwards. If someone came to you and said, I found a problem with your website, I found a problem with your business, I found a problem with what you're doing here, and it's a legitimate problem, and they brought it to you first, and they're a reporter. You understand that reporters like to scoop other reporters on stories? They like to get a story before another newspaper gets it. What if a competitor was working on the exact same story? This reporter and his editors agreed to hold the story until such time as the problem could be fixed. And then they ran the story that didn't say, oh, look at these knuckleheads and the big cybersecurity problem here. They ran a story that said, oh, there was a problem, but it got fixed. It's a much better story from everybody's perspective, except you can imagine that some reporters say, no, a better story is, look, huge problem, and make fun of it before it gets fixed. I can see reporters who do that. I mean, reporters actually do sometimes like to just grab a story and run with it as quickly as they can. So the fact that the reporter showed restraint here and brought it to their attention, and the governor wants them prosecuted for this, referring to the reporter in the newspaper. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Now, you might say, Steve, this is the third or fourth video you've done on this story. Why are you beating this dead horse? Number one, because it's an interesting story. It's fascinating to me that the governor is this out of touch. But number two, one of the few things that can actually make a politician change their direction, change the course that they've set for themselves, is public outrage. And again, I hate to use the example only because it might spark some arguments below, but we all saw what happened when the trucker in Colorado got a 110-year sentence for the crash that he caused. 110 years. There's such a huge public outcry that very quickly they stepped in and changed the sentence. And I think more people agree with the new sentence than the old sentence. Why did the governor do that in Colorado? Because of a public outcry. So we actually need to keep this story in the front of people's minds and to keep talking about it until it gets resolved. And the way to get this resolved is for the prosecutor to stand up and say, you know something, it's been reported to us that this happened. The state police investigated, the FBI investigated, and after reviewing all of the facts and everything we have before us evidence-wise, we've come to the conclusion there's nothing here to prosecute. So sorry that the governor feels the way he does, but the governor does his job, we do ours. And how we do our job is we prosecute when we think a crime has been committed and there's evidence to support that. Right now, there's no evidence that a crime was even committed, and so obviously there's no evidence to support a crime because there's no crime in the first place. That's the key here. So I publicize this because I think it's important for people to understand what's going on, and until it goes away the way it needs to, we need to keep thinking about the story. So the story, like I said, is from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and Jack Suntrup wrote it. Benjamin sent me an update and said, Steve, check this out. But the governor says he believes the prosecutor will bring charges in the Post-Dispatch case. And if that's true, that would be nonsensical. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. People do not decide to become extraordinary. They decide to accomplish extraordinary things.